All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Who's Right podcast, and here we go. The hot stove is getting started with the Juan Soto meeting yesterday. And we're gonna get into all of that and talk about it. But we haven't been on for a while. Had a little hiatus last week, and we apologize for that. But it's okay because things are just starting to happen now. So before we get started, Victor, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. I mean, this off season is just getting kicked off. Well, we got the awards season almost in a rearview mirror. We're still waiting on to see if they get it right with Lindor winning the MVP. But we'll see. At least he won a Silver Slugger. Made second team at All MLB, so that was great to see him getting recognized by the league. And hopefully, this is for many more to come, right? But we got an offseason to talk about. I'm sure Francisco Lindor isn't thinking about that. He just met with Juan Soto. He's thinking about championships in the near future. And so exciting stuff to get into. And I can't wait to see how this offseason unfolds.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we're going to do a whole podcast on potential free agent targets, but we'd be we'd be messing up if we don't start with the Juan Soto meeting yesterday. Not only did the reports come out that it went extremely well, but also we got the Carlos Baerga tweet where it's a source kind of. He's a guy that has had successes in some of this reporting and has failed in a couple of those reporting. So we're going to take it with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, we like what he said, right? That the Mets offered 660 million to Juan Soto already, and are being very aggressive with Juan Soto. And as a Met fan, you got to be excited about that.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting a contract to be offered this early in the offseason. It seems like the Mets want to get it done as soon as they can so that they can move on to these other pieces because they know that Juan Soto isn't the end all be all. He's the biggest chip in this offseason, but he's not where this offseason ends. And honestly, he's just where it begins. And the sooner that we can get that Juan Soto chip to drop, the sooner we can get moving on to these other targets that we have. And it's encouraging to see that they're very, aggressive, but it seems like all the other teams are being just as aggressive. The Red Sox put out a report that they had a good meeting with him. The Yankees are also saying they are aggressively pursuing him. So it's going to be a tight race, but love that, Steve started high with this bidding war to kind of take out all of those small fish. And I think that's only going to move this along further. Let's hope that by Christmas we can have a nice shiny Juan Soto present under our tree.
Hey, no, let's dream higher, man. Before Thanksgiving, let's go. Come on, let's get it done. I don't know how much longer he's going to drag this out. To be honest with you, because if the bidding's already started, how much more can you drag it out, right? He met with Toronto, Boston, and the two New York teams, right, already, and I'm not sure if he has any other plans on meeting with any other team like San Francisco or Philadelphia. I'm not sure if they're on the board yet, but at the end of the day, we all know, and everybody knows on the planet that you can't outbid Steve Cohen. So if he goes somewhere else, it's because he wanted to go somewhere else, kind of just like Yamamoto last year, right? With when it comes to the price, he's gonna outbid everybody.
Yeah, and you know what I'm sick of, honestly, is I'm sick of stinking Yankee fans saying that he's gonna try to take a team friendly deal, to go back to the Bronx because he just loved playing there so much. It just irks me to see how dumb you can be in that sense because Juan Soto is not going to take a team friendly deal. They think they have all this power because they had the 27 championships, and it's been a while since that's happened. It's been almost 20 years since they've had that championship, and they think that the big bad Yankees and honestly, it's just going to take the money. Like you said, the bidding war has started, and if the other teams can't keep up with Steve Cohen and his bank account, then it's going to be a very quick off season for Juan Soto. But the real kicker, I don't think we got a year's amount into that 660 million deal, but that's going to really, I think, be the determining factor to where Juan Soto signs, because you can offer as much money as you want, but how long do you want to keep Juan Soto on your on the books? Is it 10 years or is it 14 years? That's where it's going to get interesting for me. And we talk about him getting up to 70 million a year AAV, but how long is he going to get a deal like that?
Yeah, no, I know the Carlos Baerga was said around 12 to 13 years. I'm not exactly sure. He said 12 or 13, and I'm okay. I mean, the guy's 26 years old, he's only going up from now. And one of the key things that we can't dismiss in this whole meeting is Francisco Lindor. They know each other. A lot of these guys know each other. But Francisco Lindor can let him know what's going on inside the organization. Because at the end of the day, Juan Soto wants to win, right? And he knows what's going on in the organization with the Yankees, right? Lindor, one of his buddies, can tell him what's going on with the Mets. And depending on that, to me, I think that's where he's going to make his decision, because he's going to get paid. Doesn't matter where he goes. He's going to get paid. He's going to get the same amount of money, or not the same amount of money, but he's going to get the most money available this offseason from any club that signs him. But if he's true to his word, he wants to win. And if it's for us, I believe after the season we've had, where we weren't supposed to compete, I believe that we're on our way up. Right. Anybody can tell you that Yankee team was a 2-man horse, right? Until Stanton in the playoffs. But that was really a 2-man horse. And are you really going to put your trust in that organization when, there's nobody else other than Judge to help you out to win ball games?
Yeah, he wants to win and he wants to have fun. And it's not fun when you have to carry a team like he did with, he had, like you said, Giancarlo Stanton doing a good amount of carrying in that offseason. But when the rest of the lineup is kind of absent and you kind of go out the way that you did, that's not fun. We saw the Mets, even to their final out, have some fun playing baseball because each and every one on the team was contributing and trying to pursue a winning or pursue. And not to say that any other team is not trying to win, because they obviously are. But the way that we saw the Mets play this year, it seems like they're just building to a culture of sustainable winning. And I think that's something that a young 26-year-old would want to be a part of. So let's see Francisco Lindor do his little magic. And hopefully our captain can sway the young buck to come over to Queens and add on to that winning culture. And I'm sure that Steve Cohen also added to that by saying how he's going to pursue other options into this offseason. And, it all starts with Juan Soto, though. And but 12 to 13 years, we get him for up until he's almost 40, until his age 39 season. The type of player that Juan Soto is, it seems like he's it's a dangerous contract because he doesn't play defense as well. Obviously, the defense is already, although his Gold Glove finalist, what he did that like twice or 3 times, is not really reflecting on how his defense actually is. But eventually, that defense might tail off even more. And eventually we might get a DH kind of player like a Shohei Ohtani this year. But look at what Shohei Ohtani was able to do with just playing offense. He was able to put up a 50-50 season, which has never been done before in MLB history. And so even if we get something like that with the player that just adds some offense to this team later on in the contract, it makes it worth it, right? He doesn't seem like he's slowing down in his offense offensive production. And if he doesn't, then that's going to make this contract worth it. Just one or two championships, I think, is what makes this contract worth it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This contract's worth it because of who he is, who he's been since he's come into the league, and we just expect him to keep getting better, right? Everybody wants to talk, Ted Williams and all that stuff. I only care that he's Juan Soto, to be honest with you. But I do see that the impact, like young guy like that, had on the Phillies, right? Bryce Harper signed at this age, right? And you see the impact that he has on the team, and so that's the kind of bat that we're looking to sign. You're right, not the home run hitter that Harper is, but the impact that Harper is, right? So that's what you're looking to when you're looking to sign a guy like this. It's unbelievable that they both came from the Nationals, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter at this point. But you see the impact that Harper has, and that's what you want from Juan Soto, where teams pitch carefully to you because they don't want you to hurt them, and that's the ability Juan Soto has, right? So I can't see us losing on Juan Soto, but let's change gears a little bit, and because we could beat that horse, until it's blue. Talking about Juan Soto, so let's talk about a scenario. Let's say we do sign Juan Soto. I'm gonna get your take. What other guy? Because I believe we need two guys to sign this offseason, right? And a couple of people. Stearns himself, let me not say even other guys. Stearns himself said he needs to leave room for the young guys to compete in. So a couple positions for the young guys to compete in. And so what does that really mean? And where do we see the Mets signing other players in this offseason?
Honestly, man, I don't want to say run it back, but run it back, man. We talked about it in the last episode, and I advocated for how much I want Pete Alonso back in a Mets uniform, not only for the culture's sake and for the history that he's going to make being a Met for the next 5 or 6 years, but with the impact that his bat has in the lineup. You imagine a lineup with Brandon Nimmo or Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos, Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso as your top 5 guys in that lineup. And then you got Francisco Alvarez. The young kid can, have a bounce back season next year. And then you have the room for the other guys to come up, as well as not clogging it up with, because you got to remember, we still have Jeff McNeil on the books. We still have Starling Marte on the books. And those are two guys that, although we love to dream about trade scenarios with those guys, it's really not likely that we're going to be able to trade those contracts because of what we signed them for. And so those are guys that are going to stay. And you better believe that David Stearns wants to use those guys. And so the less options that you put in this lineup that will clog it up, the more likely those other guys are going to be able to come up. So you go out, sign a Pete Alonso. If you don't sign a Pete Alonso, then you need to go get, a stopgap guy for as a first baseman, because honestly, we've talked about this on the podcast before about how bad Mark Vientos' defense has been in the season. And, the statistics will probably agree with you and me on that and how bad it was during the season. But dude, if he works on it this offseason, like we saw him work on it last offseason, his arm is well equipped for third base. And so I want to see him keep that position at third base for the future. But if we don't get Pete, go get yourself a guy like, and I don't want to say it, but like Carlos Beltran or something like that, just a 1-year deal kind of guy until you're waiting on these other young guys to come up or another free agent to come on the market next year that you can move over. We can talk about Alex Bregman being another option that could play either first or third. But at the end of the day, Pete Alonso's the guy. You need a first baseman. Pete Alonso played 162 plus games this year. He's durable. He hits home runs. You can talk about his strikeout rate and average all you want, but this is the type of player that we needed in the lineup. So Pete Alonso is the only other guy that I have on my bucket list or on my wish list this offseason.
Yeah, no, and I've kind of changed my tune on Pete. Not completely, because I think Vientos towards the end of the season showed us that he can be an average defender, who knows, he might even get better, but he could be an average defender over there. And so, if Pete doesn't, that's my only caveat is Pete pricing himself out, right? And the market will dictate this, to be honest with you. But I'm with you. I'm in favor of signing Pete back, mainly because we don't have a replacement for him, right? Guys are down in the minors, or in the corner outfield, or I mean the corner infield, are ways away. There's not a guy coming that we think is going to play first base for a few years yet, right? So if they don't sign Pete, if Pete does price himself out of the Mets, because I know we're talking about them spending a lot of money on Juan Soto, but Pete's not Juan Soto. So I believe Stearns is going to be spending the money wisely. He's not going to just throw money around like we saw the last few years, right? He's going to want a winning culture, right? Sustainability in that winning, and you don't do that by throwing money at just anybody. And the years are going to matter with Pete as well, because you don't want to sign him for too long. So if they get him for 6-year contract, 25 million a year, I'm all for that contract because that'll play well, because we can talk about giving Christian Walker a 3-year deal, but at the end of the day, that's going to be, we're going to end up in the same place as Pete 3 years from now if we sign Walker from with a 3-year contract, right? And Pete can be can make history with the Mets history with the Mets, and so I think that's a big part of it. I think he wants to come back, if it's a fair deal. He loves it here, and so for me, Pete's the guy. I don't see us signing a Bregman, to be honest with you, or an Adames. It doesn't make sense for Adames because he's a shortstop. He wants to get paid like a shortstop, and he's gonna have those offers. I think when he let out that he was gonna change positions, I think that was just for to raise up his price, right? He's not moving from shortstop. Why would he? He doesn't have to, but he wants to make sure that every team's in it, or at least the impression that every team's in it, to make some more money. So I don't see that happening. I either see a Pete Alonso reunion, or maybe a Christian Walker if Pete prices himself out.
Yeah, and there's a market for Willy Adames out there. Willy Adames should not be on the Mets market. I don't know where that report came from, but that was the fakest report I've ever seen, because I don't think the Mets would price themselves into a contract like that for a 6-year deal of 160 million with Willy Adames, because you can go out and sign Pete for just a little bit more than that and have a much better hitter, and he plays his position a lot better and in a position that you actually need. My question would be to you guys: what is too much for Pete Alonso? Franklin talked about it a little bit. That 6-year mark, not exceeding 25 mil a year. But if it were up to me, I would go up to 8 years. And that's being a little fanboy of me to say that. But Pete is in his age 30 season. You front load that deal. You put some options, some vesting options as well in those contracts. Say he becomes a World Series MVP, something like that, and then he can have that player option to opt into it a year or two more into those deals. you got to play with it, man. And that's what Steve or David Stearns is good at doing. But obviously the baseline is at 5 or 6 years, and that's where he's getting priced at. And I don't think that's too expensive for the Mets if it's at if it doesn't exceed 25 million a year. But at the end of the day, you need a guy like Pete Alonso, and he's he's not going to be more expensive than any other bat that's better than him out on the market. Obviously, those years is what's worrying, but you put those options in there, and I think that solves all all the questions. I misspoke earlier, and I said Carlos Beltran. It's actually Carlos Santana that I was talking about that's on the market. Carlos Beltran is not playing baseball anymore, but he is in the Mets organization. But what do you think about like a Josh Bell type? I'm thinking I'm tossing out guys that will play first base, Josh Bell, Yuli Gurriel, guys like that can play the position, not super well, but also provide some power when they need it. I know Yuli doesn't provide any power, but he's got a decent glove out there on the field.
Yeah, I just don't see it happening. I know we got Clifford down in the minors, and we're waiting for him to develop. But the stopgap for me, maybe in a different position, maybe at DH. You go heavy defense, and re-sign Winker as DH. Or start making the move for Juan Soto to come down to first base. Who knows? But I don't really like the idea of Santana. Too far for me. For the Pete contract, it's 6 years. I'm not going above 6 years. And I'm not going to 30 million. Those are the two no-nos for me, to be honest with you. And stopgap, I like Christian Walker. And he's not a stopgap per se, because he'd be at least around a 3-year deal. I would, if we lose out on Pete, because he prices himself out of the Mets market, I wouldn't mind them going after a guy like Christian Walker, go defense, a guy that can provide some pop. But Carlos Santana, it's kind of one of those things that just like we did with JD Martinez this year, this could be the year that it's all done for Carlos Santana. He's old, and I don't want to see the same thing happen that happened with JD. JD obviously provided a lot, other than just hitting on the field, right? I don't see Carlos Santana as that guy. So I don't want them to see Carlos Santana. Worst case scenario, you sign Winker at DH, bring Winker back, and go heavy defense at first base, and leave that open for somebody else.
Yeah, no, and I could get behind that. Jesse Winker back on the team, playing that DH. Maybe even transition him to be able to play first base. First base is a position where you can train a lot of your guys to play. If you don't feel like Brandon Nimmo is doing a great job out there in left field, you can bring him into first base, and he can get the job done there too. And just because you have that flux of outfielders in your farm system that you can trade up or train to play the position, like Luis Angel Acuna, Drew Gilbert, Jeff Williams. All those guys are guys that are on the cusp of making the major league roster. And the only thing I would say for Christian Walker is that he did receive the qualifying offer. And so is it worth giving up those draft picks? And to me, a stopgap guy is not worth giving up those draft picks. And so that's why I feel like Pete Alonso would be that perfect guy, because other teams are going to look at that. And although they are signing him for, say they do sign him for a 7-year deal, is it worth giving up those prospects or those draft picks for Pete Alonso? Some teams might say it's worth it, but for us, we don't have to think about those things. And so I think that's the perfect place to land with our free agent targets, with on the hitting side. And I know that you wanted to get into some pitching as well.
Yeah. And one thing to note before we get into all that, if we do lose out on Pete, because you're right, I forgot about the qualifying offer on Christian Walker. As a guy, I don't know if Stearns will do that for Christian Walker. I don't think he's the fish to do that with. To lose draft picks on that. But if we go sign a Winker and go defense heavy at first base, Brett Beatty. Brett Beatty has shown that he can play multiple positions. You know what I mean? He played second already. Stearns talked about playing the outfield, and he's a good defensive player. So that means he can learn the position and play defense, right? If we go defensive heavy at first base. A guy that can scoop it out for Vientos and Lindor, and so who knows? That's just an idea I'm throwing out there. Because like you said, we got a bunch of young guys trying to play, and we keep forgetting about Brett Beatty, and he had a bad season, right? Or had a bad start to the season. He didn't really show that he can play, and as Mets fans, we move on pretty quickly. You know what I mean? So, he's been playing different positions. If it wasn't for him getting hurt, it wouldn't be Acuna that came up. It would have been Brett Beatty that came up. So I wouldn't mind seeing Brett Beatty at first base if we lose out on Pete.
Yeah, and you know who loves Brett Beatty? David Stearns. And I don't know how much of that is for the public or for other teams to show how much he believes in him. But he's expressed how much he believes in the kid all season long. When he got sent down, he said he was going to be back up in the major leagues that season. Unfortunately, injury led to him not being able to do that. But David Stearns believes in this kid, and he loves that he's able, or he's willing and able to play multiple positions. And like you said, if you assign him to go out and learn how to play first base, he's going to do it. And most of these Mets fans forget how great of a start to the season Brett Beatty had. He's got the potential. He obviously lost it along with a whole bunch of other Mets in that deep slump in the beginning of the season. But he can have it, and he carried the team for a week stretch or 2 week stretch because of how good he was playing. I remember we were on a podcast with Brandon, a friends of the NL East, a Braves guy, and we had just beat up on the Braves. Brett Beatty actually had beat up on the Braves, and he was like, "Is this guy legit?" And so he has that potential. He's still there. I think he can be a good option. Don't write Brett Beatty off just yet, because I do think he can make an impact here in the next season.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's possible. So if we don't sign Pete, I wouldn't mind them taking a flyer and signing a DH. And before we get into the pitching side, I know we want to get into some pitching. In a world where, because we got to talk about all the possibilities, right? We can't just, expect things to happen and see what happens, and just move on, right? We got to talk about the other side. If we don't sign Juan Soto, do we overpay for Pete Alonso?
No. If you don't sign Juan Soto, it doesn't make a difference on how you approach the off season. Like I said, he's a chip that you want to get, but at the end of the day, if you don't get him, your approach is going to be the same. You're going to try to go sign the same kind of guys. You're not going to go out and try to fill the position of right field because you don't need to. You have Starling Marte for another year. And honestly, there's not an outfielder on the market right now that really makes it worth it to pay for a guy like that. We can bring a Michael Conforto back if that's what you're thinking about. But like you said, Jesse Winker is out there, and he'd be honestly the best option for us. Mark Hanna, your boy, is also out there on the free agent market, and we can talk about all these options that on these one-year deals. But at the end of the day, the Mets don't need to do all of that because they have guys in their system that are lining up to come and make an impact as soon as the 2025 season. So I don't think the offseason changes if we sign Juan Soto or not. I think we have the same approach, and you need to. You don't need you see these other teams panic, like the San Francisco Giants, the Los Angeles Angels, even the Toronto Blue Jays. They panic when they don't sign these big fish, and it leads to atrocious seasons, and I don't want to see that for the Mets.
No, absolutely. I completely agree with you. Just to put the Brett Beatty to bed, G said he was hitting like Iglesias in the beginning of the season. You know, not quite like Iglesias, but he was like Victor was saying, he was doing his thing for a little bit, for at least a week or two. But I don't mind them taking a flyer at Brett Beatty at first base if we lose out on Pete. And as far as what you just said, I agree with you. I don't want them to overpay because if we're talking about sustainability, we don't. If once we overpay somebody and they don't pan out, right, and panic like you just said, that's when we don't have sustainability. That's when things go wrong, right? And that's when franchises and GMs get fired, right? Because guys aren't you're overpaying for guys. So I think you stay the course, right? You don't go nuts. You don't sign somebody just to sign somebody because we did that for the last few years, right? We signed a whole bunch of players that for the sake of winning, and it didn't pan out. And so I think Stearns is smart enough not to get too flustered. If he doesn't get Soto, he'll be disappointed. But I agree with you. I think the only guy that we would sign is Winker. Is if we don't get Soto, right? And he's a guy that is given a 1 maybe 2 year deal to come back, and he could platoon with Marte between outfield and DH. Because you got to give Marte some rest. But I agree with you. I don't think Stearns is going to overpay for anybody. Alonso included. And maybe that opens up the door for these other guys though, like Anadamas or But at the end of the day, these guys are. I don't know if it's worth giving up the draft picks for these guys. I don't know.
Yeah, another guy like that, that a lot of Mets fans have been advocating to sign is Anthony Santander. And that's another guy that received a qualifying offer. And honestly, it wouldn't be worth it to give up those draft picks. He is 30 years old, so you would consider signing him on a longer, 3 or 4 year deal. But he was in Baltimore, and Baltimore is a batter's box sometimes, and so I feel like he wouldn't have the same season with the Mets as he did with Baltimore. And so, you know, just stay the course, believe in the process and what you've been building, and don't give up, any ground because you got a little wind in your face. And so, yeah, man, I think Juan Soto or bust this season. We've been saying it in a sense of, if it's a failure of an off season, if we don't sign Juan Soto. But I'm saying if we don't want sign Juan Soto, then leave it at that. We don't want to sign anybody of to replace a Juan Soto because you just can't do that.
Right, right. No, I completely agree with you. Stay the course. We've gone through so many years of being the LOL Mets. I want to get to a point where there's some sustainability in the Mets organization, and you don't do that by throwing the bag at just anybody. Let's get into some pitching. One guy that you might disagree with me or on this, or but one guy that you do give up those draft picks for is Corbin Burns. You know, I and at first I was with you on maybe he's not the guy, but he's having a similar career path as Garrett Cole, and as frustrating as Garrett Cole is at times, because he doesn't always pitch like an ace. He's a bulldog, man, and he's provided a lot for the Yankees. And if he could stay on the field, just like Garrett Cole has, I think this was the first year that he didn't. If he stays on the field like a Garrett Cole and provides a similar career path as Garrett Cole, I'm signing up for that. To be honest with you.
Yeah, and listen, I'm gonna preface this by saying, Corbin Burns is a great pitcher. I'd love for him to be on the Mets because he's one of the best pitchers in the league. You know, he's a Cy Young candidate year after year. And like you said, Garrett Cole is one of the best pitchers in the league, and he pitches because. Or the reason he's so good is because he's able to get out there on the field so often and pitch, consistently well. But my only counter to that is that he's not Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole was able to do what he's done in his career, and that's great. But honestly, I was shocked that he got the deal that he did on the years that he did, because starting pitchers just don't get signed for that long, and for good reason. They are very injury prone. You never know when you're going to have a lost season in there, and they make sure to include clauses like that into the contract, but you can never predict them. Luckily, we had one of those clauses with Kodai Senga, but imagine if we had a Kodai Senga this year, what the impact he could have had on a season like this. And maybe we were talking about a championship caliber year because we had a right Kodai Senga going into it without any injuries. But that's a guy that's injury prone. Corbin Burns is not really shown that he's injury prone, but he just doesn't show to me like he has the ace level stuff that he started his career with. Obviously, he pitches really well, and he's a really good pitcher, and a lot of Mets fans want him to be on this team. But I'm not one of those Mets fans. I want to see the Mets go and sign a guy that's proven, a guy that's won some accolades, and a guy that won't cost you as much on the year side. He's going to be more expensive on the AAV side because he's a little older and he's trying to get paid. But he proved year after year these past couple of years that he has pitched extremely well. And we talked about it last offseason, how we didn't want this guy, but bring him to the Mets, man. We dealt with this all year long, and what is a one more pitcher doing this to us going to hurt us? So Blake Snell, you're going to be a New York Met in this next offseason.
No, I can't get with you on that one for multiple reasons. One, I think Corbin Burns is a different pitcher than Snell, obviously. Corbin Burns is younger, and I think Corbin Burns has is a pitcher that pitches to contact. And with the defense that we're going to supply, Corbin Burns is going to be fine. The problem with Blake Snell is that he only pitches 5 innings, right? And so my issue with Blake Snell is that he's not a pitcher that we can fully trust, in the sense that he's going to come out of the game. He's going to come out 5th, 6th inning, and and we need a guy go 7, maybe 8, but at least 7, right? And that's and we're going to go nuts, because Blake Snell is a guy that walks the world and then gets out of it. And as Mets fans, we're gonna completely go nuts on how much of a heart attack he gives us. And so for me, I know the top tier guys are Burns, Snell, and Fried. And if you give me one of those 3 guys, I'm gonna go with Burns all the time. Burns. And those other 2, I don't even want to try. Fried gets injured too much, and Snell is not a guy that goes deep enough. And with all the walks, we dealt with it this year. These guys were walking the world, and you saw how crazy we got. And that's why I can't get it behind a Blake Snell.
Yeah. No, I understand your sentiment, and I just disagree. G in the chat says, imagine this rotation: Burns, Senga, Manaea, Peterson, Blackburn. That's disgusting. That is a nasty rotation, and for Burns to be headlining that would be great, because, like you said, and like we've talked about, he stays healthy, and some of those other guys have not proven to stay healthy. 3 of those guys are actually just recovering from being hurt in this past season, and one of them didn't get hurt in this past season, but he changed his arm angle and could get hurt with the new way that he's pitching, and Sean Manaea. and so that does provide some um, stability to the rotation if you had a Burns in that mix. But you point out the fact that Snell only pitches 5 innings consistently, but he doesn't get, even though he, like you said, he walks guys. His walk rate has gone down, and what with walk rates going down, pitch count goes down, and with pitch count going down, you go longer in your starts, and so I think that with potential, with a guy that is continuously getting better, Blake Snell seems like a good fit. And like we mentioned before, Corbin Burns, although this doesn't factor in too much, honestly, because you would sign him for like a 6-year deal. He does come with some draft picks, and like I said, that doesn't matter too much. I don't want a Max Fried. I'll say that straight up. I don't want Max Fried. I don't think he's going to stay healthy, and we just talked about how important that is to the Mets. And although he does have some ace level stuff, he's and is a lefty. I don't trust him. He's a Brave. At the end of the day, and the Braves know how to work some voodoo magic with their pitchers at times. And so if he does come to another organization, I do question if he will be as good. But if you don't sign a guy like that, or Blake Snell or Corbin Burns, one of these top level guys, I'd love to see the Mets active in the trade market, because honestly, these guys on the active market right now don't really have much to offer. Obviously, we want to see Sean Manaea back. We hope that Severino signs that qualifying offer. And but like Stearns has pointed to at the beginning of the season or at the end of the season in his press conference, you don't really need a true ace. You can have guys that have stretches that act as an ace throughout the season, and we've had that stretch and that experience this last season. And I think that's a recipe for success, honestly, because the more that you think about it, the Mets are developing these aces to be a part of this system later on. And if you go out and sign a guy for 6 years, then or even 4 years, then that just again clogs it up, and I just don't want to see that happen.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying there, but Snell's going to clog it up regardless. He's going to want at least a 4-year deal, and so we're going to see that clog it regardless. And it's he's only Snell only pitched 100 innings this year, 104 to be exact, and we had guys we need to fill up innings, and so for me, it's got to be Corbin Burns. If Corbin Burns doesn't come back, I don't want to see Snell or Fried, and I'll go with I'll bring it back with Manaea, and mind you, even if we sign Corbin Burns, I want to see them re-sign Manaea. If we sign back Manaea, sign Corbin Burns, and Severino has that QO, well, the rotation is Burns, Manaea, Senga, Peterson, and Severino. And so that's the kind of rotation I want to see, right? Two guys we didn't see all year, right? In our rotation would be Burns and Senga. And so because Blackburn might not come back. I know G mentioned Blackburn, but he may not be tendered because of the injury that he has, right? And so we'll see how that plays out. We won't know that till later, and we won't know that the information that the Mets have on this injury from Blackburn, and so he might not be a guy. He might be a depth piece, right? Along with all the other depth pieces that we have between Budo and McGill and stuff like that. He might just be a depth piece at this point with Blackburn. So I want them to sign at least 2 pitchers. And that's Burns and Manaea. Severino, if he signs a QO, I'm okay with him coming back, and and if not, if he doesn't sign the QO, maybe we get him on a bargain for a 2 year deal or something like that. And I wouldn't mind that as a fifth starter for Severino. That's what I want to see the rotation. I want to see the rotation: Burns, Mania, Senga, Peterson, and Severino.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind that. It all comes down to the contract. With your same argument of Pete Alonso, I have the same argument with Corbin Burns, and so David Stearns is going to work his magic. Let's see if he can get him on a good year, a good AAV deal, and I will gladly welcome Corbin Burns because we know what he can do, and like we said, Cy Young caliber pitcher year after year. GM chat says thoughts on Roki Sasaki. I want to get your thoughts on this because we haven't even talked about it.
Yeah, no, and to be honest with you, Roki Sasaki, everybody should be on, right? Because Roki Sasaki, if he gets posted, is going to be just like any minor leaguer. So any team can afford Roki Sasaki. That has nothing to do with money when it comes to Roki Sasaki. If he gets posted this year, it all has to do where he wants to go, because he's going to make the decision where he wants to go. So if he gets posted, and the Mets, and he decides he wants to come to the Mets, well, guess what? Somebody's getting out of the rotation, or we move into our six man rotation, kind of like we've been talking about it anyways. Roki Sasaki is going to make minor league money if he comes over this year, and that doesn't affect any team to want to sign them. The only thing that affects a team from signing him is if Roki Sasaki wants to go to that team. And obviously, we want to be in on him. But as far as money is concerned, it doesn't really matter because he's not going to cost that much.
Yeah, and like you said, six-man rotation is coming anyway because we want to keep guys like Senga healthy, and so I think that happens anyway. And so Roki Sasaki, that might be enticing to him. But from all the reports that are coming out, it seems like he's most likely to be a Dodger. And it's just unfair, man, because the Dodgers again are going to poach another Japanese star. But what can you do? They're gonna. They're the most enticing team to sign a Japanese player right now. We can't just hate on a country for wanting to go over to a team with all Japanese men. And so, I'd love to have him on the team, but I don't see it happening for the Mets.
And we don't know, honestly. At the end of the day, we don't know what he's thinking, what Sasaki is thinking. All the reports are saying, or some of the reports, not all the reports, some of the reports are saying that he wants to go to the Dodgers. Who knows? Because a lot of times the teams don't want to go to where there's too many. I mean, players from Japan don't want to go where there's too many other Japanese players on that team. So, now that Yamamoto signed over there, does Sasaki want to go over there? I don't know. It, according to the reports, it might not. He might not want to go over there, right? According to there's already a Japanese pitcher on that team that is as the same caliber as him, or at least close to the same caliber as he is, and so he might not want to be the shadow to both Ohtani, because Ohtani's pitching next year, so he may not want to be the shadow to those guys. I know all the Japanese players want to go to LA, or at least to a West Coast team because it's the closest to Japan. But in the same pitch that we're going to be giving to Soto, because by the time he gets posted, if he does get posted, some of these free agents are going to be signed, and your pitch to Sasaki might be a little different today than it will be tomorrow once some free agents are signed.
Yeah, no, it's going to be, like you said, a very interesting free agency because Roki Sasaki can go anywhere he wants, really, because, money's not a factor. And so Steve Cohen can't play a part in this one. You just got to trust, Billy Epler, David Stearns, all those guys, to even Kodai Senga, to play a part and signing these guys over. Sorry, not Billy Epler. Pitching coach. brain fart right now. But trust those guys to get it done and to see what they've done with these other Japanese stars. And like you said, it could happen, it could not. Only time can tell. And that's the fun thing about these free agency predictions, is that we have no clue what's going on.
Yeah, and with Sasaki, that doesn't change your what you want to do in the offseason. Sasaki, if you get him, he's a plus, and you make adjustments, right? You can never have too many good players on the team, right? Look at the Dodgers; you can't have too many good players on the team. So if they get Sasaki, let's do it. But if they don't, he didn't want to come here because at the end of the day, it's up to Sasaki for him to go. So yeah,
I
you
got
know,
I got one last thing on this, and then we can wrap it up. Roki, Jeremy Hefner, by the way, that's the pitching coach, not Billy Upler. Anyway, is the relief pitching market? How active does David Stearns want to be on these top level guys like a Tanner Scott, like a David Robertson? Do we welcome him back? Jeff Hoffman, guys like that. Guy that is kind of being overlooked as a top reliever, but was closing out games for us last year, is a Brooks Raley, and I'd love to see him back. That's the top level guy that I do want to see back, even if I'd welcome David Robertson back, but he's 40 years old, and so I don't know how much he has left in the tank. But Brooks Raley is a guy that I think will pair really well with Edwin Diaz, and like we've said, we need a lefty, a disgusting lefty in that bullpen. And then you just let Stearns work his magic. He made a bullpen out of nothing this year, and I think he can do it again. But I do think you need a sustainable lefty, and Brooks really is going to come off the Tommy John surgery middle of the way of the season and provide a huge role for us.
maybe, because like you just said, he's gonna come back in the middle of the season, and who knows, how effective he's gonna be, because it usually takes at least a year after the Tommy John surgery, after you come back from Tommy John, for you to be fully back and as a pitcher. So I honestly can't. I don't know. I would love a Tanner Scott, but he's going to cost a lot. And the bullpen arms are actually more volatile than the starting arms. So at this point, I'm a just put all my trust on Stearns. Because I could say I want Tanner Scott, throw a flyer at Hoffman, but at the end of the day, um, I want them to have sustainability, and to have that, you got to find those gems, right? Kind of like what he did in Milwaukee. He found those gems that kind of like a Reed Garrett. Who was talking about Reed Garrett last year? Nobody. So you know, a Nunez. Who was talking about Nunez? No one. And so you got to find those guys if they're on other teams or free agency. But you got to find those arms that give you a little bit of sustainability without costing a lot because relief arms are very volatile and even when they're not injury, they're volatile, right? So injury has nothing to do with the bullpen arm. Some years they have it, some years they don't. We've seen that already. Even with Ottavino, let's bring a name from the past. Last year, not this past year, but the year before, he had it. The year before that, not so much. And so it's you never know with these guys, and that's why I'm a defer to Stearns on this. I would love to see Tanner Scott, but he might price himself out of the Mets budget on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't want to pay too much for a reliever, and the only reason I do say Brooks Raley is because he will be cheap, because he's hasn't pitched, because he's coming back in the middle of the season, and he hasn't been able to showcase the stuff in the past year. So if it is a late signing where we sign him late in the spring training or something like that, love to see it because I do think that he can play a pivotal role in this offseason. Other than that, let Stern work his magic, because he built a bullpen literally out of nothing. Although they didn't stay healthy, it was still a nasty bullpen at times.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to end it there. I think, we talked free agency a lot. Next week, we're going to talk about potential trades that we may want to see. And, does McNeil stay? Does Marte stay? What other guys that might be on the market? A lot of crochet talk this past week, and we can talk about that. But next week we're gonna talk about potential trades, and who knows, maybe Juan Soto's already on the Mets roster. Let's hope that happens. But before we get out of here, remember, subscribe to the channel, like this video, let us know how you're feeling on replay. Let us know what you're thinking. And Victor, any last words?
Yeah, man, let's do it. But this is the year. We talked about a lot this year about how this season was magical, and that's because it wasn't supposed to happen. This next year is not going to be magical because we're expected to win, and it all starts with getting the right guys this offseason. So, David Stearns, we trust you, man. Go get it done.
Let's go. All right. Until next week. Let's go, Mets.
Let's go.